At the end of tonight's homework, you're going to have to do some ionic compounds with transition metals. So I'm going to actually start with the names first, because the good news is that there's really nothing different than what we've been doing. The only difference is that the Roman numeral is present, and that tells you the charge of the transition metal. So here you have iron 3 chloride. So what that means is you have iron plus 3, and then you have chloride, which if you look on your periodic table, you know that chloride has a -1 charge. So now you're going to find the subscript. So remember, you can crisscross and reduce. So this would be FeCl3. 3 times -1 is a total charge of -3. 1 times +3 is a +3 charge, so they cancel out. Now, silver and zinc do not have Roman numerals, and during your test, I'll have this on the board. Silver is always +1. So because its charge never changes, it doesn't get a Roman numeral, and then zinc is always +2. So these two transition metals don't get Roman numerals because they're always the same charge. So we're going to do the next one. So you have silver, which you know is +1. Hydroxide is OH negative. These charges add up to 0. So I know that the final answer is just AgOH. Iron 3 oxide. Remember, this is the charge of the transition metal. So I know I have iron with a +3 charge. Oxide, ide, remember almost every ide, negative ion, every ide suffix is on the periodic table. There's 2 exceptions. So oxide is O -2. So we're going to crisscross to try to find the lowest common multiple. So this turns out to be Fe2O3. Now remember, when you're doing this, we're going to finish with this one, that you have to reduce your subscript. In this case, we haven't needed to yet, but lead in this case, Roman numeral 4, means it has a +4 charge. You could write it +4 or 4 positive. And then sulfide, remember, all the ides are found where? Except for 2. All of the ides except for 2 are on the periodic table. The other 2 are polyatomic ions. So this is S -2. And so again, I need to crisscross. So I put the 2 here and the 4 here. But this is not the lowest common multiple. So I need to reduce this. So my final answer would be PB1S2. Because 2 and 4 can both be divided by 2. So I'd like you to try to finish the rest of these. So now what's a little more tricky is that when you name these, all of these, oops, that's kind of messy. These all need a Roman numeral. Now remember, the Roman numeral is the charge of the transition metal. So all of these compounds have transition metals, so you will need a Roman numeral. So you know that the name of this is going to be iron something chloride. So everything is normal except I need this Roman numeral. This will be cobalt, Roman numeral something, iodide. So everything is the same except you need a Roman numeral to find the charge of the transition metal. And the way you do that, I'm going to give you this paper tomorrow in class, but because I have 3 examples, I'm just going to do them with you. So we have copper oxide, vanadium phosphide, and copper sulfate. I chose 2 ions of copper because remember they're transition metals, so their charges will change. So this is 2 different charges of copper. So the first thing you're going to do is use the periodic table to find and write the charge of the negative ion in the compound. So oxygen, oxide has a -2 charge. If you look at your periodic table, phosphide has a -3 charge, and this whole unit of sulfate you should have memorized by now has a -2 charge. So once you have the charges, you will multiply the number in the negative charge. Remember, not the whole number with the sign, just the number part. In the negative charge by the subscript, then divide by the subscript of the metal, and that will give you the charge of the transition metal. So I'm going to take the number and the charge, so just the 2, and I'm going to multiply it by the subscript. So 2 times 1 is 2, and then I will divide that by 1, and I get positive 2. So this is manganese 2 oxide. And in case you don't remember from elementary school, Roman numeral 1 is an I, Roman numeral 2 is 2 I's, Roman numeral 3 is 3 I's, Roman numeral 4 is IV, Roman numeral 5 is just V, and then Roman numeral 6 looks like that. Those are the ones that you're going to need to know. You can also write them without the bars if you want. I tend to do that in class. I tend to write them like this only because when you guys are looking at my keys, sometimes when these are written small, this can look like a 3. So just for clarification in class, I will write them like this, but you can pick either way, it's fine. So let's do the next one. Remember, phosphide was negative 3, so 3 times 2 is 6, divided by 1 is still 6. So this is vanadium 6 phosphide. Now we're going to do this one. Now remember, the polyatomic ion, it's helpful if you put it in parentheses first because this has an invisible subscript of 1. So remember, sulfate has a negative 2 charge, so it's going to be 2 times 1 divided by 2. So 2 times 1 is 2, divided by 2 is 1. So this is copper 1 sulfide. So 2 times 1 is 2. So 2 then divided by 2 is then positive 1. So remember, you can write the 1 or you don't have to write the 1. So this would be copper 1 sulfate. So let's bring this back to what we were working on before. So remember, I need to write in this charge. So this is negative 1. So I'm going to take the 1. 1 times 2 is 2. So I'm going to multiply these and then divide by this invisible subscript. So 2 times 1 is 2, times or divided by the 1 means this is plus 2. So this is iron 2 chloride. Cobalt has a negative 1 charge. So 1 times 2, and then we're going to divide that by the invisible 1, means this is plus 2. So this is cobalt 2. So remember, it's 1 times 2 is 2. 2 divided by 1 means that's still going to be 2. Now, some of you are noticing now, well, why can't we just reverse crisscross? Well, that's not going to work every time. If you look at this one here, sulfide has a negative 2 charge. If you just reverse crisscross, you're going to think that this is iron 1 sulfide, but that's not true. So remember, you take the charge, you multiply it by this subscript, and then divide it by this one. So 2 times 1 is 2, divided by 1 means this is 2. So it's iron 2 sulfide. So let's look at one more. Let's do this one down here. Let's do the last one. So you know this will be tin something oxide. So what's the charge of oxide? I want you to look it up on your periodic table. It's negative 2. So we're going to take the 2. 2 times 2 is 4, divided by this 1 means this is tin 4, so it's tin 4 oxide. So I'd like you to try to do the rest of them by yourself. So remember, you need to multiply by the first subscript, divide by the second, and that is your charge. And always remember to take the number, not the sign. And metallic charges are always positive because the first element is a cation. So if you're getting negative numbers here, you know you're making a mistake. The mistake you're probably doing is taking the sign. You only take the number. Do not take the sign.